We are live.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Boone Community School District School Board Directors meeting. We'll start the meeting with roll call vote.
Weber.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Teben.
Here.
Pritchard.
Here.
Melhouse.
Here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, recognition of visitors. I'm sitting in the lobby here and I see no visitors. As I look through, I don't see any visitors that are signed in here. So we're going to move on to consideration of the agenda. Mrs. Tripa, is there any changes in the agenda?
No, there's no changes in the agenda.
Okay, hearing that there are no changes in the agenda, I would entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as published.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Dr. Nystrom moved to approve. Ms. Stephen second to approve the agenda as printed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Now we're going to go to hearing for delegations. Again, I don't see anyone here. Bog, is there anyone online that has put any early comments or anything?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on to the routine business. And I'll entertain a motion for approval of the routine business.
Motion to approve routine business.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, it's been moved by Mr. Weber, seconded by Mrs. Teben to approve the routine business. Is there anything that any board member would like to extract? I don't believe there are any Unity Point or Pritchard bills this month.
No.
I did check that. There is nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Go ahead, Pat. Did you have something you want to extract?
No, I said I already checked. There is nothing.
Okay. Could I ask that everyone here in the room mute unless you're going to say something, because we're getting a little bit of feedback here. So, okay. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the routine business as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously to approve the routine business. Next, we have the professional development plan, and Mrs. Teben and Mrs. James, I'm going to assume that you two are in charge of this.
Yes, so the professional development draft schedule is presented here. Our major themes for 2021, or our focus, is social emotional learning with an equity lens, and follow up from our discussion at our last board meeting. We want to make sure that we're addressing that equity, but also through that lens of social emotional learning, as a broader piece that we know we want to support with all of our students and in our teachers learning to address both of those. We will continue to implement professional learning communities with some type of collaboration, regardless of format. That has continued to be a theme of ours that we want to continue to put an emphasis and a focus on, with those collaborative teams adjusting their instruction to make database decisions to best meet individual students' learning. We'll continue to implement multi-tier systems of support with a focus on that universal instruction, and you'll see themes throughout the draft schedule here of some of those pieces that we began our work in the last year or two on in literacy and some other content areas, and we want to continue that support of universal instruction in those areas, as well as ways to improve on our effective intervention processes and ways that we respond to data. And then our focus continues to be on expanding family and community engagement, and that pairs really well with our social emotional learning and equity. The first 4 days of school, or of back to school learning, the draft schedule there for professional development, you can see is pretty vague compared to what it might be typically at this time. We know what the big ideas are that we want to support, and we want staff to know that, you know, we plan on the first 2 days being all certified staff, and they'll be in their buildings and working through any building level work, but we really want to be able to be responsive to whatever our return to learn planning needs are and whatever's most important with our return planning at that point. So they'll be in their buildings for those first 2 days with time to work through some details at the building level and classroom prep. And then this last 2 days, the Thursday and Friday of the 4 days of professional development before school starts, we welcome all of our certified and support staff back. So we'll be doing some all district work at that time. And again, a lot of that is focused on what do we need to do to get back to school after being out for a bit. So specific times will be coming as we iron some of those things out. But at this point, that's kind of the thought process that we want to make sure we can support a lot of building level, give a lot of building level time to our teachers so they have the time, and our support staff to get settled back in and take care of their own social emotional needs. And then also have some time to support everybody at a whole district level. Then as we move down to the rest of the school year, that's a little bit more in place in that we have some speakers coming in, some consultants that we've partnered with to support our teachers in working with students from that social emotional lens, working with students and challenging behaviors, and giving our special ed teachers some additional support. And then also some additional support in literacy. We have some new materials that we're implementing at PK through 2. And so we want to make sure that those teachers have the support they need to implement that comprehension toolkit. And then we have teachers at 3rd and 4th grade who began that implementation work last year and really want to take a little bit deeper dive. So we have a consultant that will continue to work with them for a 2nd year and support them in that literacy learning. And then other themes that run throughout is time for the buildings to dedicate to collaborative time. Those PLC meetings, we hear all the time from our teachers that the weekly time is great, but when they have an extended couple hours on a full day of professional development to really dive in as a team to do some unit planning or to review data or create assessments, they really value that time. So trying to reserve that for them based on their feedback. And then also plenty of building level time so that the buildings can respond as necessary. High school has that time to work on supporting teachers with standards reference grading. Middle school is doing some more work with assessment and responding to their assessment data, informative assessments. And so they'll have the time to support their buildings in those areas on those full days as well. Julie, anything to add to that?
No, I think that what we want to keep in mind is we want to be flexible enough to provide for our teachers' needs as the needs change. But obviously the social emotional piece will remain a high priority regardless of the format that we end up using. But we did purposely give you a skeletal look at the PD simply because we want to make sure that we are addressing the needs of our teachers, and that survey that we sent out to teachers and follow-up surveys will also help us plan for those professional development days.
Brian, this is Pam.
Yes.
2 or 3 meetings ago, we discussed the possibility of providing teachers with some additional instruction on distance learning techniques, etc. And, paying seat time, whatever it was going to look like. Where did that end up, Jill?
We plan to convene our TQ committee this summer to see if the committee can approve some additional hours. Typically we do additional project hours for things like that in the fall, and they begin those projects in October. We'd like to offer the teachers the opportunity to begin some of that work during the summer, and we know several are doing or have signed up to do several things like a distance learning class. I know several are taking that right now with an instructional coach at the high school. I know several have signed up to take various things and the opportunity to do that and have that be recognized as a TQ project that they could start work on in the summer or continue into the fall if that fits their needs better.
Yeah, because I think there are people out there who probably would like that to be more confident in case, you know, distance learning continues. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Hearing no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the professional development preliminary plan as presented to the board.
I'd move to approve the professional development plan as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Pritchard and seconded by Mr. Weber to approve the professional development plan preliminary as presented to the board. Any other questions? Hearing no further questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. The motion passes unanimously. Building handbooks. We've got a lot of handbooks here and a lot of things on the agenda, so I'm going to let each superintendent or each principal gets 2 minutes to highlight what the changes are. In 2 minutes only. And we'll start from the high school since the high school ones are listed on top. Mr. Byam or Mr. Drake or Mr. Bailey?
All right, I'm just bringing mine up. So obviously with a lot of the changes that have been going on, we started off with our COVID-19 statement that there could be adjustments according to where we are with CDC policies and things like that. One of the things that we've had over the last few years in social events, we'd like to cap it. We've had some people that are above the age of 21 that have been coming to dances, and we'd like to cap that at 20 years old. We would like to also have our guests show their IDs and their driver's license just for safety precaution measures. Students must serve their prior consequences, so the detentions, that's something we've been doing, but we just want to make sure that it's listed so everybody is aware of it. We make sure that we announce it with plenty of time prior to any dances. We added some basic information when it came to standard reference grading, and we have a linked SRG handbook that we're creating and finishing up. So we'll be continuing to work on that to share out with families and give that communication to our families. We added some tier 1 and tier 2 supports when it came to absences. Mr. Bailey worked extremely hard this year on the unexcused absences and the unexcused tardies. And so just defining it a little bit clearer. One of the things that we're looking at is also headwear. It's one of those things where we're not having a lot of issues when it comes to within classes. Teachers are pretty flexible with what's going on. And so we just feel that in the hallways during passing time, it's not a place to necessarily fight it, but when they walk into a classroom, we'd like to have them remove their hats. Obviously, any advertisements, alcohol, beer, drugs, tobacco products would be prohibited. In addition of wearing clothing that are sexually suggestive or is derogatory directed to individuals or groups on a basis of race, religion, creed, color, national origin, disability, gender, and the age is prohibited. And then the graduation requirements needed to be updated just based on what we passed last year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Byam. One quick question I do have is that Dan's age 20 or 21. we had a big debate about this. I think we spent 20 or 30 minutes at a board meeting about, 2, 3, 4 years ago. I think it was Kirk Leeds was still president at the time, so it's been at least 4 years ago.
That's correct.
But when we made the decision, was that a handbook decision or was that a policy decision?
I believe it
Which
was.
level was that?
I believe it's a handbook policy. I don't think it's a board policy.
I
Drake,
could not remember
do
for.
you remember?
So I try to go through, I don't believe it is. If it's a policy change, I try to add it under the category section. So like headwear and graduation requirements are policy changes, but I don't think social events was.
And I think
Okay.
we made that change, and we had a 29-year-old, a 23-year-old, a 24-year-old, a 25-year-old, and I think another 23-year-old that prom. I just don't think it's in the best interest of our students to have anybody that's over the age of 20 at one of our dances.
Yes. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
In the headwear, and this may be even falling under just clothing in general in the next few weeks or in the next year. As I read it, it's in addition, the wearing of clothing that is sexually suggestive or is derogatory directed to individuals or groups on the basis of race, religion, creed, color, you just read it. Where would the Confederate flag fall out in that with all everything going on in the world around us right now?
I would love your input on that. But that's a great
Okay.
question.
Any
Anyone
other
else?
things?
Right now, it doesn't belong.
You guys know, I know you know what I think. So does anyone else have any thoughts?
I would go down the line that it doesn't belong.
I have a question. This is Pam. Okay, a lot of kids have Black Lives Matter t-shirts. Where, that I think it's okay. That's my personal feeling. But what if it causes a substantial disruption in the education environment? And that's usually the test.
And that's where it ends up changing.
I
Is when
think
it
the other,
causes disruption.
you gotta look there too, is that we have a lot of police officers who have kids in this school district too.
Correct.
They can be offended, and then if you read the rules, it said to be not to be offensive to others. The Black Lives Matter t-shirt might become offensive to them. So this is going to be a particular situation all fall. I think it's just as much at a national level as it's going to be at our local school level. I would just say one other thing. As we go to mandatory masks, we may have some kids that a lot of the nurses at the hospital, and even myself, will wear a type of a hat or a scarf that has buttons sewn on them because so their ears don't get irritated and rubbed through a long day. And I don't have my mask on tonight just because I'm running this meeting and most of you might not be able to hear me. If I don't, there's also no one within 6 feet of me. We may have to look at something there too.
And that's kind of why we went with the flexibility in the hat policy. I honestly, it's something that I don't necessarily feel that we need to battle. And I did do a poll a few years ago from our staff that was something that they agreed with too. So I'm fine at making any edits or changes that you guys would like to recommend. I think that also goes with, we could accept it this way and with our COVID policy, do kind of a COVID handbook when we decide our hybrid online and everything that we're going to be sharing with and any particular policies that we need to address. That might be something that we could address within a handbook that could be approved in August, at the beginning of August, if you want.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it comes down to almost a case-by-case situation. And I'd love to hear Julie's thoughts on this as well too. But we could run this all the way down the road of Black Lives Matters and Confederate flags and pride flags and Christians reading their Bible, you know, like it can go so far down this line. I think it's situational in the fact of like, if a kid is just wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt and walking through the school, I don't have an issue with that. But if he's standing on the table screaming at people, trying to get in a fight about it, and saying with the Confederate flag, I don't think there's a place for it. I don't agree with it. But if someone is just wearing it and staying out of trouble and not causing problems, then it's more acceptable. But yeah, like because it's going to be never ending, and I've seen it already in the community, already on social media. You pull one thing out, and then we pull 12 more things out. So
Well,
yeah,
I think honestly, one of the things that we've done a really good job of at the high school, and we try to work on this, is valuing the uniqueness of all. I think we talk about that. We talk about the Toreador way. We talk about how to treat one another each day. I know that I've had students wearing a Confederate flag. I had a walkout a couple of years ago. Well, the responding group also did a walkout, and everybody was respectful. And I think one of the things that we need to continue to teach our students is to how appropriately protest or appropriately get their message across. And it's about teaching. It's not about accusatory. It's not about attacking. It's about listening to other people's viewpoints. And that's one of the things that we as a country should be proud of, is that we have that opportunity to do that. And I come from a family that came from a communist country, and they didn't have that opportunity. So I think we genuinely have those discussions with our students. Can it be a hot topic? Absolutely. Can it be offensive in some cases? Absolutely. But it's our responsibility to make sure that we're teaching appropriate ways of sending those messages.
Yeah. Thank you. One last quick question is, and this goes on all the handbooks, the adult visitors welcome policy. I think we need to look at that one mainly in the face of the COVID. Because right now we don't want a whole lot of extra people in this building or at any level because of it. So I don't know if we change it in every one of the handbooks, or if we just have that in our COVID handbook. And if someone asks the question, we say, sorry, but the special COVID handbook overrules the individual schools handbook. So Ms. Tripa, I'm neutral on that.
Yeah, so I think that we need to have it under a COVID handbook, kind of what Chris was talking about with regard to a lot of these things. I don't want to go and change our handbooks to match that, because I'm hoping that that's not a permanent, COVID's not a permanent situation for us. So I think anything that would deviate from our current handbooks to accommodate COVID related procedures needs to go into COVID handbook, would be my opinion.
Okay, any other board questions? Hearing none, I'm going to go to Mr. Kelly. You get your 2-minute opening statement.
All right, mine will be pretty quick. We didn't have a lot of changes in the handbook. So updated our new staff. Under our exploratories, we added guidance back in. So we had gone away from that last year. So this next year, hopefully, if things go well, we're planning on adding guidance back at the 5th and 6th grade levels, updated lunch prices, fixed the grammar errors that Google Docs let me know about, and added some things to help out the nurse. We added some leaving the building. We tend to have people show up every once in a while and disappear without checking out, or somebody calls and says, I'm coming to pick my kid up, they're sick, and the nurse doesn't know about it. So we're just trying to make sure that people are aware that for somebody to go home sick, it needs to go through the nurse, and they need to let the nurse know that they're not feeling well, so the nurse can contact the parent so we know people are leaving. So that was just to help out the nurse. And then the rest of the stuff that I highlighted really just ties in with what we were just talking about. We were talking about, I highlighted stuff where food being dropped off for visitors or parents bringing lunch to the school, our arrival times, pickup, departure times. My thought with that was I was going to highlight it in the handbook and put an asterisk by it and just see the COVID policy. So when we go back from it, we don't have to totally add it back in there. I can just unhighlight it. So the things that I highlighted to share were just those policies that I think will adapt with COVID. So I'll highlight it, put an asterisk by it. And then when we go back to normal, whenever that is, we can just fix that without having to take it out and put it back in.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Questions from the board members to Mr. Kelly?
Couple of questions again. Sorry. And maybe I just missed it in the handbook. I couldn't have access to the just changes doc, so I was trying to read through the whole thing. Are we still staggering the start and end times of 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Great. And then I saw something in there. Maybe this wasn't a change. It's just something that popped up to me. I saw something about high energy drinks. Is that new?
No, that's always been in there. That's always kind of been one of those considerations where we tried to keep, like, I don't know. It's one of those things that's like impossible to police, deter you from bringing Monster energy drinks to lunch and stuff like that. But, half of our kids show up in the morning with a coffee from Scooters or somewhere like that. And they're bringing drinks in, and what they have in there, now that we've kind of gone to allowing more water bottles and what they have in there, it's hard to police. Do you have, Monster energy drink? Do you have Gatorade? Do you have water? I guess as long as it's not a problem or causing issues or, something inappropriate. We've kind of tried to discourage that based on lunchroom policy expectations of what's supposed to be available during lunch, by our guidelines for the lunch program. But it's not something that we just try and discourage it, but we don't make a big deal of it.
Sounds good. I just saw it and it piqued my interest. I'll never forget Autumn telling me that they had to take Monster or something like that away from like a second grader. And I was just shocked.
When they bring it in, somebody had to buy it for them. So
I know. Any parents watching this right now, stop giving your children Monster below the age of 16. Like, it's bad.
Okay, next up would be the Paige Franklin. We're gonna let Autumn give her 3-minute introduction. She gets 3 minutes because she's got the beep as well. So
In
then
preschool,
we'll have questions and Brad's for last.
I think there's 5 handbooks there. So you have the Paige and Lincoln one, and my changes are exactly the same, so I don't need too much time. Brad and I had revamped them last year and really updated our beliefs around social, emotional, and behavior. So we didn't change anything in that. We really appreciated the time to spend with it and address it so that parents got a better feel for our beliefs. But same thing, I highlighted our drop off and pickup. When I had to have this completed, I don't know what that's going to look like. And I appreciate that idea that we've spent a lot of time building kind of our dream, what it looks like. And if we get to go back to that soon, I'd hate to revamp all of this. So I really like Scott's idea of putting an asterisk by it, highlighting it, and just saying, see the COVID handbook. So we can do that for sure. So there's no big changes whatsoever in the Paige and Lincoln handbook. Beep, there are not any big changes, except we had to add a child abduction statement per our DHS evaluation. So that's added. It's just the generic how we respond statement. And I think it's in the Beep parent handbook. The Beep employee handbook, we've just added a couple things about trainings and what's required before you start, what's required while you're doing it. They've changed the hours of continued learning. to increase a little bit. So we had to change that. The BEEP handbook, I believe, includes the COVID handbook that you guys already have approved in the past, but we just had it attached still to it. So that's in there. Preschool is the same. We changed hours just a bit because we like to have the start and end time the same with the start of the school day and the end of the school day for parents. So if they're picking up, they can grab both kiddos at the same time. We did that last year. We just had to change those times a little bit as we tweak times this year. That looks the same. There's some preschool employee handbook changes that had to happen due to our desk audit that were just policies and procedures that were already in place. We had to add a diapering one of how often we check the diapering space to make sure that it's safe. And then I think there was another one about training and questions that was just something that was required by our desk audit. So otherwise, everything is pretty much the same. And I
Okay,
think parent handbook for preschool is the same too, just times changed in that.
okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, Autumn. Questions from board members or administration to Autumn? Hearing no questions, I'd like to thank all the administrators for all their hard work in putting these together. Oh, we got Brad. Sorry, Brad.
All right.
We need Franklin.
I'll be quick. We did a kind of a complete overhaul of ours last year. So other than just going back through and fixing a couple things with wording and adding the COVID statement, no changes for this year.
Okay. Any questions for Brad? Okay. I'd like to thank all the administrators for their diligent work on getting these all out on time. And for editing them for English. We no longer have Mrs. Westrom on the board to take care of our English lessons for us. So appreciate that. Now, hearing no further discussion, do I have a motion to approve all these? I'll take one motion for everything.
This is Pat. I move to approve the handbooks.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Teeben, seconded by Dr. Nystrom to approve all the handbooks and policies as presented on item 3.02. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we'll move on to the substitute pay. Mr. Treble?
So with the entering the school year and anticipating the need to have more guest teachers, we thought it would be a good idea to re-examine our sub-teacher pay to make sure that we are competitive with our neighbors in being able to attain guest teachers. So you should have received that document sharing the sub-rate pays. And I believe last February is when the board last looked at this. So it should be fairly recent, but wanted to allow the board the opportunity to have a discussion to determine whether we feel comfortable with where our sub-rate pay is, or if we feel that it's necessary to increase it at this time.
This is Pam. And when I talked to Jeremy a little bit, or we communicated a little bit about the idea of maybe needing to up ours, I just went ahead and called around a little bit, said, you know, I'm Pam Nystrom from Boone. What's your sub pay going to be? And so I don't mean to step on any toes. And then I saw the list and I thought, oh, rats, I'm being naughty. But districts are already upping. And when I talked to Ames, they said they're talking about it at their board meeting tonight. And they're going to go probably from 120 to 125, Woodward Granger is at 130, Madrid's at 115, Jefferson or Greene County is at 120, and United, I talked to their business manager, he said during last school year, but I got the idea from him that it was after we were out of school, they went ahead and they changed theirs to 125. And so I think we're at 105, so we're probably at the bottom again, unless last year you raised it again.
We're at
'Cause I haven't-
120 this
You're
year.
at 120 this year, because I didn't
Yes.
sub last year. Okay, then I
We,
think,
we were 105, I believe, until this last spring.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So I guess that's pretty in the ballpark then, you know. I don't know what Ogden's was, but I figure with the same soup, it's probably about the same as United.
And Ballard, I think last time, when we did that in January, February, I remember Dr. Menard saying that when he called the Ballard principal or superintendent, the Ballard superintendent was a little bit upset with him because he discovered that they were low like us and we're going to have to come up some. So I'm going to guess they're up. Maybe it's too soon to say. I'm not sure if maybe this is something we need to look at in a month or two and see how we're doing on finding substitutes, and also try and get an update. Like Dr. Neisman said, calling them to get the latest information. I'm not sure how dated this graph was, but I think at minimum, this is something that we need to closely follow in the next 2 to 3 months time, and maybe have it being brought back to the board in, let's say, October.
I do know, just so everyone's aware, I do know that we are already seeing a decrease in our available subs that we had utilized before. So we are looking at some creative ways to try and recruit substitute teachers that we haven't been able to attain yet. So I think what you would hear from administration is they would have a desire to be as competitive as we possibly could be, because we are aware of decreased availability already and we haven't started school yet.
And it tends to be one of those areas, even for $5 being in the middle, we draw people that are willing to come over from Ames and Ogden and closer areas that, I think it's one of those areas that it doesn't hurt you to be in the top because it draws in some more of those people. And I think we're going to, not only are we going to be short because some of the ones that we've utilized in the past have taken jobs this year, I think there might be some that we're still helping out that we know have had health issues that won't be coming back also. So I think anything we could do to entice subs to want to be here would be a good plan.
Hey,
I'd
Mitch, is there
recommend
any
that
way?
we follow along at least with what Ames is doing. And if they're going to 125, I think that would be prudent for us to do the same.
Any way to determine how much we spent on subs last year? And what, say, a $10 increase would cost us out of the general fund?
I just did it. It was about $4 or $5 grand more. We spent about 130 or so last year on subs.
Well, I'd say we should
on a normal year.
We should be $10 to $15 higher than whoever's highest in our conference. Give people the most reason to come to our district to hopefully keep our kids in school as long as possible.
Yeah, I agree with Jeremy. 130, 135. Like, I want to be the top. Like,
I mean, we're talking about $10,000 to have the best educational opportunities for our students. It seems like money well spent to me.
Would any of you people like to put that into a motion?
I'd move that we increase our sub pay to, what are we at right now, 120?
Yes.
To $135 a day, knowing that we may need to be flexible depending on other districts' increases in the next month or two.
Okay, I have a motion to move our sub pay to 135 per day. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
I see a second from Mr. Weber. It has been moved by Mr. Pritchard, seconded by Mr. Weber to increase sub pay from 120 to 135, which basically just a little bit over a 10% increase. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign. Motion does pass. Next is our school board meeting schedule. Mrs. Treba?
As far as the school board meeting schedules, I would recommend that you just continue with the schedule that you've had, so it maintains some consistency for our community members to know when our board meetings are. I wouldn't want to change them dramatically. So I would just recommend that we move forward with similar schedule as what you've done in the past.
Okay, I will probably I might miss the March 8th meeting, but I'm not sure what we're going to be doing by then with spring break and COVID. We all might be still here. We all might be doing this from home. We might all have had vaccines and being back to normal and playing a normal spring break the following week. So I think that is something we can discuss in February if it comes to that point. Anyone else have any big problems with any of the schedule? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the school board meeting schedule as published?
I would move to approve the school board schedule as published.
Okay. Is there a second?
Ms. Pat, second.
Okay. My only question is, do we need to add October, November, because the new board would not go into session until mid-November?
Are you and Jeremy up for election this year?
No.
I thought we had consistency for like at least a full year.
2021.
2021. Jeremy and I are up in 2021. So,
Yeah, we're good.
yeah. The November, you could probably put the October one in here. We could add that one now. November one, we're going to have to wait until the election, and then you have to wait a week after the election to make sure you're the county assessor or the county auditor has, and the board of supervisors approved and canvassed the election results. So we often have to move that election one back a week, but we can deal with that later. So if we just add the October, would the people who made the motion second, would they accept a friendly amendment to add the second Monday in October as a meeting date too?
Question, who's up for election?
I would be Jeremy and I in
Oh, it would be you
2021.
two. Okay, got it. Okay,
It's a year, we're talking a year away, but
a year away. I was going to say that's quite a ways away. Okay.
the thing of it is in the past we went September to September. Now we're going November to November.
Okay.
I move to accept the amendment.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
As a
moved
friendly
and
amendment, don't need to.
Yeah.
okay, all in favor? Any other further discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes. Next on the agenda are policy employee conflict of interest. Mrs. Treba.
So both of these first readings are due to the FEMA grant that we received. There are policy changes we need to have in writing to accommodate the requirements of our FEMA grant. So I would recommend approval of this first reading for conflict of interest as it is stated.
Ms. Pat,
They
I
wanted
move
more
to accept.
federal writing. They wanted more federal writing in these policies. What we had in there wasn't good enough for their standards for the grants. No, I talked to IASB and they're in the middle of making these policy changes, so they're worded better for us schools. We'll just go back and adjust those after they're done. So.
I'm sorry. Comments, questions, concerns from our board? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve code number 401.3.
This is Pat. I move to accept the first reading of code number 401.3.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Stevens, seconded by Dr. Nystrom to approve the first reading of code number 401.3. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. First reading does pass. Next, we have board policy number 705. Point 1R2, and I'll entertain a motion on this one.
I
Is there
move
a
to
motion, gentlemen?
I move to approve policy 705.1R2, purchasing federal requirements, first reading.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved to and seconded to approve board policy 705.1R2, addendum first reading. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. We will now move on to fraud reporting policy. I'll turn this over to Ms. Tripa too.
So this is similar. We needed to change our language to match the requirements of the FEMA grant. The difference between this one and the one that's coming up after is that they do not have to be in board policy. They do not require 2 readings. It is simply one time approval.
Any discussion, questions from board members? Again, this is something that the School Board Association is working on. We don't see any big problems with compliance to it right now. Correct. Okay. Okay, is there a motion to approve? Joy, is there a motion to approve?
Pam moves to approve the fraud reporting policy as FEMA request.
Is there a second? Did I hear a second from Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved by Dr. Nystrom, seconded by Mr. Weber to approve the fraud reporting policy as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. We now go to the personally identified information policy. Mrs. Tripa.
Same situation. We changed the language to match what FEMA was requiring as part of our FEMA grant. Again, we checked with IASB and they are also working on that as well, but we see no foreseeable problems. This is also not a policy change, so it is a one-time approving situation.
Okay. Questions from board members? Discussion? Hearing no further discussion, is there a motion to approve the personally identified information policy?
This is Pat. I move to accept.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Pritchard to approve the personally identified information policy revisions as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have on the agenda is the IASB legislative resolutions. For the board members who are new, what happens every year in July, we get a statement from the Iowa School Board Association about what their lobbying efforts are going to be for the coming school year. More specifically for January, but they get their policies and everything started now. We look at these in July at this meeting. We then encourage the board members to take them home, scan through them, and come up with about your list of your top 4 issues. The 4 things you think the Iowa Association of School Boards should be lobbying our state legislature for the most in the coming legislative session. At our meeting in August, we'll come back. Everyone will give their top 4 list, and we will see how the vote comes out. And hopefully we'll be able to come up with a policy, and then we have to recommend, I think it's by August 15th or something, we have to send those responses into the Iowa IASB. So I'll start with a discussion from any board members. If they looked at them and they already got their top 4 picked out, great. I'll take anyone that's got their top 2. Okay, so I guess we have some homework. All of us have some homework for the next month. Go through those, write down your top 4, and we'll get together. Maybe we can have a whiteboard in here at our next meeting so we can have Mitch be able to write down who's voting for what, and then we can come up with a consensus. So, okay.
Okay, so just to clarify, as I look through all of this, are we discussing, are we out of the blue headers or the sub numbered stuff?
Oh,
The numbers, it starts
The
on
numbers.
page
Perfect.
11.
Perfect. That helped.
It's the resolutions, I believe, correct?
right. Mm-hmm. Yep. And these resolutions will also be voted on. The reason we start now is that when we go to the State School Board Association meeting, if and when they have it, or else they'll have it by Zoom like everything else. Each school district gets a vote based on the size of their school. There's one representative from each school district that sits at it. Last year I did it because the rest of you were sitting in new board orientation. If someone else would love to have the honor this year.
You've already appointed me, Brian.
Well, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. So this is information that Pat will need to have so that she can speak for our district if anything comes up. So page 12 through 16. There's 30 of them here. Let's y'all come up with the top 4. Okay. So I gotta get my agenda out here. Oh, the return to learn policy. I'm sure this is set in stone right now. I kind of doubt it. Ms. Tripa, we're gonna ask you to kind of summarize our return to learn policy as it stands right now on July 13th at 7:24 p.m. Because I'm sure it will change
Yes.
by July 15th at the same time.
Yes. So I believe it's been 2 weeks since you last met as a board and discussed the return to learn plan. And so within the last 2 weeks, I had the opportunity to attend the Boone County Board of Health meeting, as well as we have received more information from other organizations, such as the American Academy of Pediatricians, as well as the Superintendent's Association, National Education Association, other organizations that have shared what they view to be some of the safe ways to open up school. And at the Boone County Board of Health meeting, it was shared that the recommendation is that we require masks of both adults and students, and that as applicable with regard to the students, as there will be some situations where we may not be a mask, it may be a face shield to accommodate some of the medical needs. We may also have teachers in face shields in terms of when they're teaching vocabulary or they're having to communicate. Obviously, with face shields, that can be a little bit easier than with a face mask. But the recommendation of the district would be to follow the Boone County Board of Health as well as the American Academy of Pediatricians recommendation of face masks. We also, in the last 2 weeks, have had time administratively to try and measure our classrooms, because the recommendation, obviously the ideal setting would be 6 feet. But the American Academy of Pediatricians had also shared that if there are face coverings being utilized, that 3 feet would be the minimum space that we would need to have between our students. So we did measure classrooms to see which classrooms we could accommodate that and still be on site with all students, which classrooms that was not possible. We looked at the current furniture that we have in each of the classrooms, because in some cases, the furniture that we have does not lend itself to the 3 to 6 foot spacing that we're looking for. For example, we have tables in some of our classrooms, and so that does not allow us to have that kind of spacing that we'd like to see. So that's something that we have been discussing as to how we might be able to accommodate and maybe alter schedules to determine how to have social distancing occurring. We've also looked at our lunchroom capacity, as the recommendation is to be at least 50%, at the same time wanting us to have our students in cohorts. So whichever would be the lesser would be our goal for the lunchroom, as far as the numbers of students in the cafeterias. And then in the last 2 weeks, we had been finalizing our extended school year programming, which starts July 20th. And so that will be the beginning of us introducing the face coverings to our staff and students. So they will be utilizing face coverings during the extended school year. We do have them spread out among 4 buildings to also minimize and maximize the cohorting and minimize the chances that if there happened to be a situation where students needed to not be in school for 14 days, that it would not cause our entire extended school year to not meet. So those are some of the things that we've done with regard to our extended school year. So as we looked at trying to determine a hybrid concept, we had explored a couple of different ideas, one being an AM or a PM situation where maybe half the students came in the AM, half came in the PM. And we also are exploring students would attend for 2 days, have a day where our teachers would be provided some professional development and allow our teachers to help those students online that need assistance. And then 2 days of online, and then the other half of the students would be in person. So 2 days on, a day of assistance, and 2 days off. We would divide it by families, where we would have, so that families would have the same schedule. So we do it alphabetically. But that's kind of where we are right now, is in the brainstorming phase. We have not decided anything yet. In fact, we had sent out a survey, not just to our parents. The last time we met, that had not been done. We did send out a survey to parents to find out where their perspective was with regard to the different topics. And we had a really nice turnout with the survey. It was 1,022 people responded to that survey. We did send a survey out to our staff as well. We've had, the last time I looked, it was 255 responses to the staff survey. And so before we come up with an actual rough draft of on-site and hybrid plans, we need to reconvene with staff members after having the first set of feedback so that we can hopefully come back to the board on the 21st with a rough draft. And then our goal would be to send a rough draft out to the community for parents and staff to provide further feedback before we make a final determination in August as to what our recommendation of how we will actually return to learn in the fall. And the reason to wait till August is because, as you know, things have changed dramatically even in the last 2 weeks since the last board meeting. And we want to make sure that we're making an informed decision with the latest data that we can. And we're hoping that by providing the rough draft to our parents and staff next week, that we would be able to at least give them an idea of how to plan for one of those 3 plans, and then make sure that we have as much feedback from our stakeholders as possible so that we're meeting the needs of our community. The other thing that we've been working on, we'll continue to work on, is providing an online option for those that are not able to attend in person. So that's something that we are looking at for a variety of reasons. We do have an online plan that solely online that we already shared in the Toreador Times, but as unfortunately, we will probably be tasked with students who have to quarantine at home for 14 days, even if it was an exposure and they're feeling fine, depending on what public health might recommend to them. We need an option for our students to be in person, go online, and then back in person as seamlessly as possible. So we will have an online option for those in that situation, and hopefully one for those that do not feel that they can medically attend in person at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Tripa, for that brief summary. Let me just make a couple statements here. Some of you may know, some of you don't. I'm also chairman of the County Board of Health. In the Board of Health, we had our longest meeting since I've been chairman for 7 or 8 years, debating this policy the Board of Health approved for Boone County. It's basically the same one that was approved for Story County. Story County, their chairman of their Board of Health is a senior pediatrician over there in Ames. And two of us did talk and tried to have things the same between the 2 counties as much as possible. The other statement I'd like to make is that this is not a political Republican versus Democrat issue. You really want to know American Academy of Pediatrics, who's the one that I'm putting the most weight behind, because that's the big national group of pediatricians, and the medical field is very highly respected, much like the American Academy of Family Practice, American Medical Association, the American College of Physicians, which is the internal medicine group. They came out with a recommendation saying all kids need to be back in the classroom if possible, way before Mr. Trump or anyone else came out with it. There's a couple concerns. Number one is kids are losing their socialization skills because they're not here. Concern number 2 is a lot of these kids, the only good square meal they get every day is when they're in school. Concern number 3 is there are a lot of national experts, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, that believes that we're missing a lot of cases of child abuse and child neglect. Because in the past, all kids had 98% of the kids came to school every day, and the teachers saw them, had eyes on them. And the teachers they suspected something. Technically, teachers are mandatory reporters, but they could also go up to the teacher or send the teacher to the guidance office, principal's office, and prevent further abuse. And when these kids are at home all the time, they're just not getting that. So those were some of the main reasons behind the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations. They feel masks are strongly recommended for all the kids when possible. Some kindergarten through, say, second graders might have problems with them on their face. For that reason, I would encourage parents who are listening tonight, and if you have a grandchild, have your kids, your elementary age kids, start wearing a mask around the house for an hour or so. Make it a fun game or something, so your kids actually get used to wearing those masks for an hour. Start with an hour, and then maybe a couple hours after a week, so they can get up to wearing them 3 or 4 hours. Now, they're not going to have them on all the time. Probably when they're out at recess, it's going to be pretty tough to keep them on, but hopefully they're out and about running and not that close to one individual for 15 minutes straight, which is what some of the national criteria say you have to avoid. With that said, the other thing I would say is that an example of a kid who would have to quarantine for 14 days would be if a child's parent picked up COVID-19. Let's say they worked at the hospital, or let's say they worked at a meatpacking plant, or let's say they worked at the college and they came home with COVID. Then that entire family is in isolation for 2 weeks' time. And no one from that family is supposed to be out of the house, and definitely no one from that family would be in school. So that's be an example of the 14 days. So the child might be healthy, but there's someone else in the household who is positive. And if we want to try to get this thing stomped out at all, those kids who are living in a house where there's someone positive, we need to isolate for 14 days. That's the only way we're going to get that. Our other kids, I think we need to get them out. A couple other things I will say as a physician is that we know that the kids are less likely to transmit the virus to others than are adults. That's kind of the good news. That is the viral load. If they got COVID and they're asymptomatic, the viral load, that is every time they take a breath, how much they're putting out of that virus, it's probably 10, 100 times less than the viral load that an adult asymptomatic person is putting out. So that's probably one of the good things. On the other hand, we have to recognize that we do have some teachers with some health issues. And for that reason, we need to have the students wearing masks. The mask is more to protect everyone else from the person with the mask on. Because when I put this mask on, it's mainly to protect someone from getting COVID from me if I had COVID and I was in the 3 or 4 days asymptomatic phase, or I was an asymptomatic carrier. Now, the face shields plus masks or the N95 mask, they do protect the wearer from getting COVID. So those are things we have to look at, but I think bottom line is we need to try to get these kids back in if we can safely do it. And I've gotten some questions about, is this a political issue? And I would say, no way to me is this a political issue. I'm looking at the science behind this. When we had our discussion at the Board of Health, there was no talk, Democrat versus Republican or anything. Board of Health members, there's 4 of us right now. We're all appointed by the County Board of Supervisors. We have no political interest in this. We just want to do what's best for our kids. And with that, I'm going to open up to other board members or to administration for comments.
This is Pam, Brian. I had the good fortune of listening to the webinar that was presented by the University of Iowa Department of Public Health. You might know those people. Those 4 physicians and Dr. Padati from the governor's office were on a panel, and they had some very good information. And like you said, only about 5% of the kids get the virus, and a lot of them are asymptomatic. And, only a certain number get very, very ill, but some do. But their recommendations, 4 out of the 5 of those doctors that spoke, their recommendations were real consistent. masks or face shields as can be managed, and to reassure parents that there's only a real limited number of reasons why a person couldn't wear a mask. And Dr. Edmond basically said, people in construction and industry and the medical community have worn them for years and years. And it's people that have chronic heart conditions and respiratory conditions that have difficulty wearing them, and young kids and kids with challenges. So, they were real consistent in that. They were real consistent in the 6-foot distancing guideline. They were real consistent in cohorts, smaller cohorts of students. These people were experts, not just in public health and epidemiology, but, one represented pulmonary and critical ill patients, one represented kids. They also had, very good credentials, and their bottom line was listen to your local health department. And I was really glad to hear that, because we've got to put our trust in you guys. I'm glad you're working with Dr. Passion. I think they had great ideas for bathrooms. They had great ideas for very little movement of cohorts around the building. They had, lots of good recommendations, because the bottom line is to keep kids healthy, because they pass it to adults, and keep our teachers healthy. If anybody wants to read my notes, I sent all the board members copies. Anyone's welcome to them. Jill has good notes too. And then the woman who coordinated things from the University of Iowa sent us all slides. I believe Lisa Cook sat in on it too. But it was very helpful. And I think we need to listen to those people, because, like you, Brian, they're the experts. They talked about getting kids back. I mean, they all want kids to get back. And so that's, a lot to consider. There's a lot to consider. And correspondence from staff is, interesting. There are a lot of, I don't know, I'll say there are some teachers who are really concerned, because if they get sick, they don't want to bring it home, because they live with people who are fragile or they have health conditions. So the more information we have, I do believe the more information we have, the better. And they stress getting parents, like you said, get parents ready for this, because school isn't probably going to look like school looks. And I think we need to be open-minded. This isn't, like you said, a political issue. This is more of a moral issue. In the last week, there were 4,000 new
Somehow lost Pam.
We all lost Pam.
Yep.
Temporarily. Hopefully Bob can get her back on.
Yep. I have a few thoughts. I wait for her to come back.
Go ahead while waiting for her to come back. Joey, go ahead. Go ahead while we're waiting for Pam to come back.
Well, first off, we all as board had a teacher email us today, and I don't know if everyone had a chance to read through that, but it made me weep. It really did. Just was a perspective that I hadn't even thought through. I've thought through the fact of we need to protect our students, and I've thought through the fact of we need to protect our teachers and trying to balance that out. And then I've never even thought about the fact of our teachers are dealing with, they need to protect themselves, but they know that they are on the front lines of educating our children and caring for our children and all the things that Brian talked about. They understand the weight of all of this. And so as much as I feel it as a school board member, hands down, these teachers, these associates, these bus drivers, lunchrooms, administrators, you guys are on the front lines of it. And so I'm just so thankful for you guys, and yeah, I just want to thank you guys for that. A lot of stuff that I think through as we talk through. I mean, just maybe some questions, and they're just don't need to be answered tonight, just as we think through it. What does sports look like in the fall? Maybe that's a question for Brett. Maybe he knows that already. Maybe not. I don't expect an answer, Brett. I really don't. As Julie, are we for sure going to have an online option for all of our students, or is that just for a certain amount? Because those are questions I've already been receiving as a school board member. Teachers pay, you know, as we talk about, you know, if a teacher comes into contact with someone with COVID, or even they potentially have COVID and have to take 14 days off, are we going to require them to use up all of their sick time and vacation? Or are we just going to pay them to take those 14 days off? And then even this one maybe isn't even that important, but just I saw this thing on Facebook, whatever that means, of, you know, because we were talking about maybe the face shields for those with literacy. And so maybe Brian, you can answer this one. I saw an ad for a face mask with a shield built into it. I don't know if that helps and is viable. Yeah, lots of thoughts and questions and things.
West Des Moines is in addition to face masks, also requiring all the teachers to wear the face shields. And I think that's not a bad idea. Again, if it's going to protect our teachers more, it's something we should be considering as well.
The face shield issue is one that here in Boone County we've debated about. Some with our providers and some of our nursing staff are using those instead. University of Iowa is one of the biggest proponents of face shields instead of masks, to be honest with you. I have, Joel, you were saying about the saran wrap type mask or with a clear covering. I have seen those. I've had a deaf interpreter come in, and she had a mask like that where probably a 3x5 area was basically firm plastic, and then there was paper around the edges like a regular mask. And she said those are available. So that's another option. Using both mask and face shield. That is something that we do in the hospital or in the offices. Anytime we suspect a COVID-19 patient, we will put both our masks on and our face shields. So those face shields are an option. I know one time we were picking them up for about, the hospital was getting them for about $3 to $5 a face shield. And they've been modified and improved since the ones we got initially, which aren't the most comfortable things. That's why we don't wear them all the time. But there's some that are more comfortable that are out there we may have to look at. This is a floating moving target. Sports, I'm going to let Mr. Collins give a couple words here in a second. But I will say that if you're interested, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Linder, who has worked for the Cedar Rapids Gazette since about 1997, 98. He wrote an editorial. He's their main high school sports beat writer, suggesting that possibly exchanging the fall and spring athletic seasons. That is doing soccer and track and golf and tennis in the fall. That is sports that are a lot less contact. And then in the spring, going with football schedules. There's a couple colleges, I believe the Pioneer League out east is already doing that type of thing. So I think it's a fluid area. I don't know when we're gonna have the two associations come up with a firm statement. I'm gonna ask Mr. Collins to speak next.
Yeah, just some updates from me. We just actually received a message from the the union and the association together to all ADs, saying that they were working diligently on further guidance from the fall. As of right now, they're still planning on practices beginning August 10th, but they were looking at which is what the typical schedule is, the projected schedule before all of this happened. But they're also, trying to wait for Department of Ed and county health departments to kind of make their move, so to speak. I know a lot of districts are discussing return to learn plans, and that they are very diverse in nature, and that may have an impact on things. Currently, I can tell you that I've been very, very pleased with how we've been able to get through our summer sports. Right now, it's very random how it's affecting teams. I think there's a couple more that went down today that can't finish their season. We're trying to do our due diligence and make sure that we're able to finish out ours. Our girls have a scrimmage tomorrow night, and then they play in their regional game at Ballard on Thursday. So we're getting closer for them. And then our boys are at Hampton tonight, host Winterset tomorrow night, and then we will host the first 2 rounds for district baseball. With that comes some added stress, but I think the association took a very good step. Although we weren't completely aware of it. They went away from double headers for the first round. So we will only host 1 game instead of 2, which I think helps with the social distancing. It helps with the sanitizing of dugouts and bleachers to just have those home sites. We're having some of those open gym. We're spraying down the weight room. We're doing what we can, but obviously we can't cover everything. And I think decisions from school districts as to what plans are going to happen academically will have a strong impact on what we're able to do with athletics. I'm interested to know. I think we're all just sitting waiting and as to what we can and can't do, and how decisions from districts will affect what we can do. As far as I'm also hearing a lot of the flipping of schedules, whether it be on Twitter or Facebook or, local personalities that have their opinions on flipping fall to spring and spring to fall. It's a good idea in theory. I will tell you from an AD's point of view, if we were doing that, I would have liked to have made that decision about a month ago, as far as for preparation for the season. But hey, we'll do what we have to do in order for our kids to participate. I just know with more and more schools going down with the current guidelines, if one student athlete gets a positive case, and the whole team has to go into quarantine, that will have a strong impact, especially on some of the ones in the fall, some of the sports in the fall where there is a higher population of kids involved and there's more contact in some of those sports. But then again, I see a couple today where it's all based on county health and what their interpretation of things are too. There's a couple that are still moving forward, and so in other places of the state. So that's kind of where we are. From my point of view of things. So
let me just say this. I just got a text message saying that the conference the DMAC is in, they are planning on, apparently it's on the 6 o'clock news tonight, their fall contact sports, i.e. football, soccer, and volleyball will be played in the spring.
Yeah.
The basketball season been moved to January to March.
I think volleyball has also been moved to the spring. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Football, basketball, and volleyball have all been moved to spring. So this is fluid even as we're talking here tonight.
Can I share something about one of the questions Joey had about staff if they happen to be gone for COVID-related illness? I can answer that question now. In fact, I believe that Boone even passed the resolution last spring. The CARES Act actually accommodates individuals that may be diagnosed with COVID or have to care for someone with COVID for 2 weeks paid leave. That's in addition to the leave that the district would have for their staff members. So to answer that question, they would have that opportunity. After that first 2 weeks, though, then that would be tied into the leave practices that we currently have as a district.
Thank you, Julie. I do remember voting with that, but yeah, just it's always helpful to be reminded and for this to be on public record. So thank you.
I also addressed one of Joey's questions. Joey
Yes,
asked
Mrs.
about,
James.
okay, Joey asked about options for online learning. And I know that Mrs. Trepp and I talked earlier today about some of the legalities and the things that we're working through to make sure that we can provide those options. But I also spent about an hour with Bog Patterson, our director of technology today, talking through what do we have for technology. We know that there may be some additional things we'd like to have to be able to do some online and remote learning better, but we may not be able to get that technology instantly. So how will we make sure that we can be prepared to provide for families and students in August? We talked through what we currently have that we could make use of to make sure that we could meet those needs, and he feels pretty confident that we would be able to meet the needs of our families and students if we needed to with what we have, and also talk through some options for, we want to make sure that we can support our teachers, that just because our teachers are in the classroom, but there may be a family or students who have to be at home, that's kind of doing double duty as a teacher to serve your kids face-to-face as well as those that are home. And so we have some teacher leaders we've tasked with helping kind of brainstorm how will we manage that and what are some things we can do. They've kind of put their heads together and are coming up with some ideas, some ways to support teachers in that. And then Mr. Patterson and I discussed what different technologies could we use, what software subscriptions would we want to use district-wide that would help streamline that and make sure we could support our families, and also what options might we have for those families that don't have easy internet access. We know we can provide them public access outside our buildings, but are there some other things that we could do? For instance, we talked about, could we do a USB drive with a video on it so that there's some instruction for students and not just a worksheet if they were remote. Depending on the size of the video, don't quote me, that USB may not be our final solution, but he and I talked through some of those options and are continuing to work on that because we want to make sure that we can provide robust learning for our students if they happen to be at home.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. James. Dr. Nystrom, I think you got back on. Did you have anything else you were going to say? You were saying 4,000 and then we lost you.
I can listen to some things and then it goes out. I don't know why I have a poor connection. Bob thinks it's MediaCom. Could be. No, I just said there's been 4,000 new cases in a week. So Iowa sure isn't flattening the curve yet. So I agree. This could be different in 2 weeks. It could look vastly different. And that.
And there she goes. I was gonna throw out.
And there she goes again. I will say she said 4,000 new cases the past week. Boom, for about the last 10, 12 days, we've been averaging about 5 new cases confirmed here in Boone County every day. And Story County, they're obviously averaging a few more because they've got a larger population, but they're still at high risk. They've been in the top 10 in the nation a few days within the last 30 days for rate per capita. So it's still here. Mrs. Teben, we have not heard from you or Mr. Pritchard.
Chris had a comment he wanted to make. And while I'm live, I want to say thank you, Bog, for working so much harder during all of these Zoom meetings and you've done before in a school board session. Just thank you, Bog.
You did hear from me. I mentioned about the face shields.
Okay, okay, Jeremy.
I think it's going to be tricky. We're going to be, damned if you do and damned if you don't, no matter what. What I'd like to know is seeing all the data. We saw some of the data from the surveys from the parents, but I'd like to see what the data from the teachers are. Are we going to lose any teachers? Are there some teachers that won't come back? What does that mean for us? So there's some other data that I think we need to be paying attention to, which will happen in the next week or so.
Yes, the teacher data just was closing tonight at midnight or sometime later. So
encouraging any staff watching to log in and do that if they have not already. It looks like a majority of our teaching staff, our certified staff, have answered that, but we definitely could hear from more support staff and any of those certified who haven't responded yet.
Correct. Jeremy, I'll let you talk, and then Mr. Byam, you had something. And anyone else, I'm skimming through here. Raise your hand right now so I can catch you.
Not much for me. I'm just a plumber, so I'm gonna have to defer to the experts on most of this stuff. I just hope that we place equal emphasis on student safety and staff safety. I know I've heard from some staff about an online option if they are at risk. You know, could they choose to teach remotely? If you know, I don't know how feasible that is, but if we have a significant portion of our students that are going to be learning online, could we provide an option to our staff to teach online to help protect them? That's one thing that I've heard. So I know that it's being looked into, but I hope that we're paying as much attention to our staff as we are our students. I'm sure that we are.
Okay, Mr. Byam.
I just wanted to say that I think I genuinely appreciate the over the last 6 years that I've been in Boone. I think one of the things that I've appreciated most is the growth that we've had as a district in the ability to prepare for something like this. When the teachers were able to go to an online version of their classes and did it pretty quickly. I think one of the things that I've appreciated is the creativity and the innovative spirit that we have, and leading the way as a district. And so I think, you know, we've looked at hybrid, we've looked at different opportunities. I think we can think of something with our staff to make sure that we're keeping our kids and our staff safe. I know that this week, Dr. Osterholm is actually going to give a recommendation on some for schools to give, he's going to give a recommendation. My stepdad is also a physician, and he's been keeping track of kind of what's going on. And so I think one of the things, looking at like my data from my staff, I did reach out to my staff, and there are some concerns where you're going to have staff members that are definitely going to have to isolate themselves from their own family. And that's scary for me. Obviously, it's scary for my staff. And so I think one of the things that I continue to challenge my staff on when we're looking at our students is we have to have Maslow before we can have Bloom's. So we have to have our basic needs met and our safety met before we can do a really great job of educating our students. And so I think we're tasked to finding those solutions that can help ease the burden on our staff and on our community. I think I have a lot of faith in what we're doing. I have a lot of faith in the people that you know, are surrounding us, and I think we can make the right decisions there.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting discussion. I will say, Mr. Byam, Dr. Osterholm, he is another one of the experts nationwide that I think a lot of people listen to. He is an epidemiologist I believe he works for the state of Minnesota now, or for the University of Minnesota. One time he was at Mayo Clinics, been in this business a long time, and he's someone that everyone listens to. I'll be interested to hear what he has to say about going back to school.
I agree with that.
Again, this is an ever-changing policy, and we're not really approving a whole lot tonight because anything we'd approve, we'd be changing. I believe the board has a meeting next Monday night, and so I'm sure this issue will come up again. People have questions, concerns, encourage you to email our board members, call us, send us a letter with your concerns. We'll try to answer them as we can. Some questions we just can't answer right now. We're gonna have to wait until August 22nd. Unfortunately, I say that only half joking because things are gonna be changing that fast. So with that, I'm gonna move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot for the superintendent's report because my time has been pretty well spent working on Return to Learn and trying to maneuver my way through some of those obstacles that keep coming up. So probably just let you know that I've been meeting with community members and staff, trying to get familiar with those in the community and and making sure people know that I am here and how to reach out to me. I would also encourage anyone watching, in addition to sharing your thoughts with the board, to please keep a close eye on the surveys that we send out and to please respond to those, because we really are paying very close attention to those surveys. We will be having follow-up surveys coming out that will be even more specific because in order to make informed decisions, we need people to give us feedback. So I want to thank everyone that did provide feedback, but encourage you to continue to look for those as well. I also had a meeting last Friday where Mitch and I had a meeting at ISFIS with the Grunmeyer search firm that performed the search when I went through the interview process, and they had a whole day set aside for Mitch and I to go through the financial state of the district and then to review. If you recall, those of you on the board would be familiar with the survey that I had to take as a part of the hiring process. Mitch had to take that as well so that we could look at the dynamics that exist with regard to each of our strengths and maybe the areas where we can support one another. And I am in talks with one of those members to see what it would cost us to provide that same opportunity to our admin team and to central office, because I think you're better when you can build off of one another's strengths. And it was a very unique survey. It's one that I've not done before. Any of the leadership surveys, those administrators that are watching, I think, have probably done the strengths training surveys and such that kind of help you know what your strengths are. But this, the one that Grunmeyer uses is unique because it has 3 separate surveys that help you better identify just kind of just your strength areas and how you think and how you interact with people. So that, I thought that was a really good day, well spent and very productive. So I'm hoping that we can bring that back to our administrative team, who can then maybe share some similar processes with their own staff. Our SFM is an insurance company that we brought on to help with workers' compensation, and their sole purpose is to discuss plans on how to make Boone a safer place to be an employee. And I had joked, I think I had sent all of the board and some of the staff members the joke that I can't wait to bring the Penguin Shuffle to Boone, but that would be something that is one of the strategies to help us keep from falling and slipping on icy sidewalks, and it's something that actually is a fun way to make things safe. And I think that once we have an opportunity to share these strategies with our staff, it does make you feel better about being in a district that cares enough to take steps to make you safer. So I'm excited to be working with them as well. And then tomorrow, the Department of Education is going to be providing more information and more guidance with regard to special education on return to learn plans as we go through this process. So we've said it numerous times that things keep changing. And while we've had previous guidance, we're going to get more guidance on tomorrow's webinar. And then there should be another webinar on Thursday as well. And I'm not sure if that'll be a continuation of special education or if they'll hit another topic yet, but we will stay adept at that. We will also be sharing, just as we did with our parent survey, sharing the staff survey information as well. I think it's really important to be very transparent whenever we ask for feedback, that we share the feedback we receive so people know how we're basing our decisions and what information we're using. So that is something that we will continue to do, is share the feedback that we receive with our stakeholders. So that's all I have for my report today.
Okay, thank you very much. And by the way, welcome to
Right.
Thank you very much. By the way, this is Mrs. Julie Treba. She's our new superintendent of schools. Seems like she's been with us forever. We hired her back in late January before all the COVID, so we're able to do personal interviews. And she has been slowly getting involved since she moved to our community in June. I encourage everyone to stop by and say hello to her from 6 feet away or with your mask on. And I'd like to welcome her and her husband, Tim, to town officially. With that said, we are going to adjourn the regular part of our meeting.
Quick question, if I could ask one. Just curious how we're looking in terms of resignations versus new hiring, how that process is going, and if we're looking like we'll be full staffed when school starts this fall.
Mr. Bym, I think we're just missing a Spanish teacher, right?
Yes, we are missing a Spanish teacher. We missed out on a really quality one. We got a resignation about a week and a half after one of our candidates that I had met at Iowa State. She accepted a job and signed a contract before I could get to her. I got the, and then we haven't had many applicants. So we're trying to put some solutions together, and hopefully we can get some answers here in the next week or two.
My answer, Jeremy, is right now, I think we'll be okay, but we'll see what the next few weeks bring.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from any other board members before we have a executive session we have to do yet for board members, Ms. Trupa and Mitch. Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break so Bob can get us switched over, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening in tonight.
Just verifying we are going to the different